Well, good evening. How are you doing on this Monday evening? I am Chad Bresson. I'm the lead church planter at the table. So glad that you are with us this evening. It's another conversation at the table. We do this 2 or 3 times a week, and in it we talk a little bit about what's going on at the table, and we spend some time with a short devotional. And if there's something you'd like to see us cover here on a conversation at the table, please let me know. Let me know in the comments section, and we'll get to it. On Saturdays, the conversation at the table is a myth buster. That's always a little bit of fun. So I encourage you, join in, participate here at the table and on our Facebook page with our conversations. How's your Monday been? I haven't seen exactly what has taken place, so some of you probably know better than I do right now, but I've kind of been watching what's going on with baseball. Is there going to be a baseball season? There was supposed to be an announcement today. Like I said, I've been busy, so I haven't been keeping up, but I grew up within about 50 minutes of Riverfront Stadium, so we grew up as Reds fans. The earliest recollections I have of baseball, they're the Big Red Machine. In fact, the earliest I can remember with Big Red Machine is watching them play the Baltimore Orioles in the 1970 World Series. So I go, yeah, see my gray hair? I come by that honestly. And probably the most exciting thing that happened to me when I was a kid, of course, was Johnny Bench's home run 2 years later against the Pittsburgh Pirates that took them to the World Series. That was absolutely exciting, and for a kid, after that moment, I wanted to be Johnny Bench. In fact, I had a shirt that had his number on it, number 5. Later, I wore Tony Perez's number 24. I really liked Tony Perez. I liked the fact that he was a first baseman, always coming through in the clutch, racked up a lot of RBIs. That guy should be in the Hall, by the way. So I'm missing baseball. I wish we had some baseball to watch this summer. We had another great service at the table yesterday. It was good to see everybody again. It was great to spend time with God's people and great to be with them around the table, as it always is. Yesterday, we were talking about Jesus and his temptation in Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. And Jesus is led out into the wilderness after his baptism. It actually says the Spirit led Jesus into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After this big event in his life, the baptism of Jesus, he's declared to be God's Son. In fact, the Father is well pleased. Next thing you know, he's in the wilderness. And he's not simply in the wilderness, he is going hungry. Now, all of this is supposed to be there for us to see that Jesus is living out Israel's destiny. You know, Israel had spent 40 years, there's that number 40 years in the wilderness, and many times they are going hungry, many times they are tempted, but all of this imagery is to help us see that Jesus is living out the destiny of Israel, and we're supposed to see as he goes to take on the devil, is he going to succumb to temptation? Is he going to give in to temptation like Israel did? Because Israel failed miserably. There is an interesting thing, though. When we find Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days, Matthew goes out of his way to say Jesus was hungry and that he had a hunger. And there's always a question when we come to the story of Jesus' temptation, a question that especially in the circles in which I grew up, was Jesus really tempted? That question always comes up when we're discussing Matthew chapter 4. But before we go, it'd be very easy for me, it'd be very easy for us to go wading headlong into all the controversy and deep waters here, and there's usually only one right answer that people want to hear when we're asking this question. Was Jesus really tempted? But the interesting thing is, I'm going to stop right where the text does. You know what the text says? The text tells us that Jesus was led into the wilderness by the Spirit to be tempted. And that's where it ends. I'm not going to go any further than that. Jesus was tempted. And people love to wade into the questions that the text is not entertaining at all. In fact, it never really comes up in any of the scriptures. The reality is that Matthew wants you to know, number one, that Jesus was tempted. Number two, that Jesus was hungry. Jesus was and is human. Now, we can argue till the cows come home about all of the possibilities and non-possibilities and about temptation, about Jesus giving into temptation, whether it's possible for Jesus to give into temptation and all this stuff. Matthew's not asking those questions. He's not answering those questions. He wants us to know that Jesus was tempted and that Jesus was hungry. Now, there's a whole lot of other things that are going on here, but I tend to think that we spend a lot of time asking questions that the text is not entertaining because we have to have some sort of pat answer for all of those theological questions. But when we do that, you know what we miss? We miss Jesus' humanity. We miss Jesus' humanity that is for us. And it's for us in the moment. Matthew wants us to see and he wants us to feel Jesus' humanity. And that it almost always goes missing when we have all these theological discussions about, was Jesus really tempted? Could he have given in to the temptation? All those questions. Matthew's not entertaining those things. We're going to miss the fact that Jesus was and is very, very human in this story. Matthew says Jesus was hungry. You see, it's very easy for us to superimpose a super Jesus onto these stories. And we like doing that. Jesus, the champion figure who powers his way. He powers his way through the temptation. He powers his way through all the miracles, powers his way through his death, through his resurrection. Now he's sitting on that throne in heaven. Power, 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 power. That's all we want to see in the text because that's what we want. Now we're superimposing our wants, our needs, our desires onto the text. When the gospel writers want us to see Jesus' humanity. They want us to see Jesus, a Jesus that is like us. That is, Jesus is overtly tempted here. Here's something else we're going to get to in a minute. Jesus is overtly tempted in this story. But there are other places throughout. If we were to continue reading Matthew, and we went all the way to the cross and all the way to the resurrection, we'd see that this isn't the only place Jesus is tempted. He's overtly tempted here. And he doesn't give in to Satan's temptations. But he's tempted his entire life. He's tempted his entire ministry. At one point, he has to tell Peter, he says, at some point, the Son of Man is going to die. He's going to be buried. He's going to be in the earth for 3 days, and then he's going to rise again. And Peter says, nah, that's not going to happen. And immediately Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. Go away, Satan. Jesus is being tempted. We don't think about that. Jesus is actually being tempted by Peter. You want to know why? Because the common thread throughout Matthew is that these temptations, these things that are grabbing Jesus' attention, are always trying to steer him away from the cross. The big promise in Matthew is at the very beginning of the book. Jesus is going to save his people from their sins. You call him Jesus. He's going to save his people from their sins. And all the temptations at Jesus are aimed at knocking him off that mission. Peter says, nah, it's not going to happen. That was actually a temptation. Jesus recognizes and says the same thing he says here in Matthew 4. Go away, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. We're done. We get to the Garden of Gethsemane. Did you know that 3 times Jesus prays that the cup would pass from him? And the disciples are sleeping. 3 times. He's tempted 3 times to give up on his mission, to chuck it all. And then he's on the cross. And what happens on the cross, we're looking for power Jesus here. On the cross, those who were passing by yelling insults at him, here's what Matthew says, shaking their heads and saying, you who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God. Now there's that phrase. That phrase immediately should take us back to the temptation because that's exactly what Satan said. If you're the Son of God, Command these stones to be bread. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests with the scribes and elders mocked him and said, "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now, if he takes pleasure in him. For he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" There it is again. If you're the Son of God, come down from the cross. And in the same way, the criminals who were crucified taunted him. And then a little later on, there's this statement, again a taunt, "Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." Again, a temptation. 3 temptations on the cross. 3 taunts, 3 temptations. You see, Jesus' life and his death are filled with temptation. And they are filled with temptation for him to get off his mission of saving his people from their sins. Every single temptation is aimed at Jesus and his mission to save. You see, salvation is on the line. World history is on the line. Over and over and over again. Save yourself, Jesus, save yourself. You don't have to do this if you're really the Son of God. If you're really the Son of God, save yourself. You know, Satan had said, "If you will worship me, I'll give you everything." Save yourself, Jesus. Save yourself. You know what the sad thing is? You know how many times today, we're at the end of our day here on a Monday. You know how many times today that I tried to save myself? What's your response when you're criticized? Let's save yourself. What's your response when you make a mistake? What's your response when you make a mistake on the grill and on grilling pork chops? You try to save yourself. What's your response when you get in a jam that you can't get out of? Or you get in a jam that's not of your own doing, somebody else is doing. You save yourself. Save yourself, save yourself, save yourself. Life for us is about saving ourselves, saving our reputations, saving our identity, saving our self-worth, saving our self-esteem, saving the advantage that we have, any advantage that we can get, always making sure that we're one up. Save yourself. Save yourself, save yourself. And normally, or a lot of times, at somebody else's expense. Just save yourself. You don't have to do this, especially if it's unfair. In the name of truth, save yourself. I have to save myself. The law tells me to save myself. It's what I'm supposed to do. It's what the world expects me to do. Because this is life. Saving ourselves. You know what? Jesus was wrongly accused. He was unfairly crucified. And on the cross, he is hearing the taunts, "Save yourself." You know, no one really understands Jesus. Everybody left him. He was all alone. Jesus even allowed lies to be told about him, and he let it go. Save yourself, Jesus. Save yourself. And you know what? He didn't. Jesus did not save himself. Life was one big temptation for Jesus, and he never saved himself. He didn't save himself for me. He didn't save himself for you, because our salvation is dependent on him not saving himself. He didn't save himself. Tempted again and again, over and over and over, all of his life, save yourself. And he doesn't. And that's good news for us. That's grace. You see, we're always trying to save ourselves. We're always failing. We're sinners. We need the forgiveness when we give in to temptation, and we do all the time. When we give in to temptation, we need forgiveness and grace from the one who didn't save themselves. He didn't save himself. We need grace and forgiveness from one who didn't give in to the temptation. He saves us because we do give in to temptation. We need his forgiveness. So remember that. Remember that tonight. You can go to sleep. You can rest because Jesus has forgiven you. Jesus has saved you because he didn't save himself. That's tonight's conversation at the table from Matthew 4. Join us again here on Facebook throughout the week. We'll have more conversations at the table. We'll also have a Sunday service, 10:30, right here, again, live streamed on Facebook. You can also join us at the Los Fresnos Community Center for our service. You can join us on Zoom Thursdays. We have a Bible study every Thursday at noon on Zoom. Spend some of your lunch hour with us. Doesn't have to be the whole lunch hour, just spend a little bit of time. And this week we'll be looking at Matthew chapter 4. We'll have a good time. Anyway, hope you're having a great evening, and I hope you have a great day tomorrow. Remember, even tomorrow, when you're faced with temptation, that Jesus did not give in to temptation, and he did that for you. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home as much as possible still, but stay connected. Jesus has you. He promised. Have a great evening.